Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. In Los Angeles, there's significant police presence downtown following a third straight day of protests and violent confrontations over federal immigration raids. It's reportedly been fairly quiet this morning, though. Governor Gavin Newsom announced yesterday that California will sue the Trump administration over its decision to deploy the National Guard without the state's consent. That action after 3 days of clashes between protesters and LA police and federal agents. NPR's Adrian Florido has more.
Police on Sunday used tear gas and rubber bullets against protesters. They arrested dozens. LA's police chief said some had hurled chunks of cinder block at officers and fireworks. California Governor Gavin Newsom pleaded with protesters not to give President Trump an excuse to crack down. Over the weekend, Trump invoked a rare presidential authority to take over California's National Guard and deployed 2,000 troops for 60 days. Newsom and LA's mayor, Karen Bass, said the isolated skirmishes did not require that kind of response. They called on Trump to rescind his order. But speaking to reporters on Sunday, Trump said, quote, "We're going to have troops everywhere." Adrian Florido, NPR News, Los Angeles.
As tensions climb over the president's immigration policies, the administration's travel ban is now in effect. The directive, which also includes heightened visa restrictions, affects more than a dozen countries, mainly in the Middle East and Africa. Trump cites national security concerns for the action. Hundreds of scientists at the National Institutes of Health have issued a document they're calling the Bethesda Declaration, criticizing cutbacks at the agency. Here's NPR's Rob Stein.
More than 300 scientists on the NIH's sprawling campus in Bethesda, Maryland, just outside Washington, D.C., sent the Bethesda Declaration to NIH Director Jay Bhattacharya, calling for him to protect the agency. The name of the document refers to the Great Barrington Declaration, which Bhattacharya helped write during the pandemic before he was at the NIH, questioning lockdowns and other public health measures during the pandemic. The Trump administration has cut hundreds of NIH staff and slashed billions in NIH funding. Rob Stein, NPR News.
In the Pacific, Tropical Storm Barbara has strengthened into a hurricane. The storm is about 155 miles southwest of Manzanillo, Mexico, with top sustained winds of 75 miles per hour. The National Hurricane Center in Miami says swells will affect portions of the coast over the next few days. U.S. stocks mixed this hour. The Dow Jones Industrial Average down 28 points at 42,730. The Nasdaq is up 67 points, and the S&P is up 7. From Washington, this is NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Gabrielle Dawkins. Last year, a court ruling changed how campaign law violations are prosecuted, requiring district attorneys to go to the Texas Ethics Commission first. From the Fort Bend County Bureau, News 88.7's Natalie Weber tells us a new state law could undo the effects of the court ruling.
Supporters of Senate Bill 1220 say it will make it easier for DAs to go after politicians and lobbyists who violate ethics laws. But critics say the bill empowers rogue prosecutors. Andrew Cates is an attorney who represents clients before the Texas Ethics Commission. He says that under the new law, DAs won't have to go to the commission before prosecuting these crimes.
So this bill essentially reversed that to say that if there are criminal penalties involved, you don't have to exhaust all of those remedies at the commission.
The bill passed late last month after receiving more than a 2/3 majority in the House and Senate. It will take effect as soon as Governor Abbott signs it. From the Fort Bend County Bureau, I'm Natalie Weber, News 88.7.
Every day, 125 people in the United States die from gun violence, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Shannon Watts is the founder of Moms Demand Action. She told Hello Houston she's advocating for a safer world where the leading cause of premature death isn't gun violence.
We've passed 500 gun safety laws in the last decade. We've elected thousands of gun sense champions to office. And so it's really important to remember that, this work is difficult. You're going up against a very powerful special interest, but it is effective.
Watts started her mission in 2012 after the mass shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Connecticut that left 20 children and 6 educators dead. It's 78 degrees and mostly cloudy right now. A 50% chance of thunderstorms and showers after 1 p.m. and a high near 95. I'm Gabrielle Dawkins, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance, home of the Name Your Price tool, so drivers can see coverage options at Progressive.com or 1-800-PROGRESSIVE. Price and coverage match limited by state law. And the listeners who support this NPR station.
Live from the University of Houston, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manouse, Celeste Díaz Schurman, and Frank Billingsley.
Good Monday.
Good Monday. It is Monday, isn't it?
I know. Well, yeah, I don't feel like I got a weekend. It was busy.
Same.
I'm sorry.
Quickly, just to let you know, talking about busy. We got a full show for you today. Of course, we'll be taking a look at the headlines, but then we're going to also take a look at what's been going on with these protests across the country, even here in Houston, but it kind of got a bit out of hand in L.A. We'll be talking about that, looking at ICE raids. We're going to try and get a better understanding of how City Council works through our Techsperts segment coming up later in the show. On the arts and culture side, the Fade to Black Arts Festival going on in Houston right now. We'll learn more about that. And last night was Broadway, as they call it, Broadway's biggest night.
What happened last night?
We'll talk about all of that coming up on the show. But I think the thing a lot of people woke to this morning or heard this morning, torrent of rain coming down on my little house.
Yes.
Oh, it was amazing. I had to drive through it. Our little dog has to go to rehabilitation.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought I would use the words dog and acupuncture in the same sentence, but that's part of it. So it had to be there at 7:30, and that is right when it just unloaded where I live. And so, but we got there safely and soundly, and there's some chance of rain really every day this week, right into the weekend.
Yeah. When it comes down that heavy, we like it or don't like it when it comes to flooding. We don't like a big, heavy downpour like that, right?
You know, it's hard. If you're in a poor drainage area, then it's going to
Yeah.
cause some street flooding. But it shouldn't be more than street flooding. And the good thing about Houston is that when it does stop raining, it floods so quick. I mean, it
Drains.
It drains so quickly. Yeah. So we have a good drainage program here. It just gets overwhelmed, as you know.
Yeah. Well, this morning, I heard it. It woke me. I was like, oh, my Lord, what's going on out there?
Let's go back to bed.
Well, yeah, for a little bit. But then when I did go to leave, my street is still flooded when I left this morning. So.
Yeah, and there are some low parts around the city where you got to be careful.
You
But
do,
for
absolutely.
sure, my kids definitely enjoyed listening to the rain this morning, so it was very sweet.
Good sleeping weather if you
And
get
they didn't have to
sleep.
go to
It's
work.
sleepy
Or they
weather,
didn't
yeah.
have to go to school this morning, right?
Yeah,
'Cause they're
everybody's
out
home
for the
today.
summer.
That's right.
Yeah. We already told you what's coming up on the show today, but another reminder, we are on YouTube. You can watch us live over there. Just go to the Houston Public Media channel. Remember, if you're watching us live on YouTube, in the chats and comments section, there's a whole other grouping that goes on there, a lot of discussion of the show, but always click the like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you know when we're broadcasting. I guess with that, because we're going to chat more later in the show about what we all watched last night, and we'll bring in our weekends there. But what we can do right now is get to the headlines of the day.
Yes, we continue to monitor immigration raid protests. Over the weekend, hundreds protested right here in Houston, but remained peaceful. Protesters gathered in the Montrose area to march and call for an end to mass deportations. These protests here in Texas followed days of unrest in Los Angeles, where President Donald Trump sent National Guard troops in response to the demonstrations in L.A., causing a major clash between demonstrators and authorities. Border czar Tom Homan told NBC News that local California officials, including the governor and LA mayor, could be arrested if they continue to oppose the federal operation around Los Angeles. Homan accused Governor Gavin Newsom and Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass of creating a sanctuary for criminals, adding that neither are exempt from potential arrest. Meanwhile, about 300 National Guardsmen are deployed at 3 locations around Los Angeles, the California governor's office said this morning. It follows a presidential memorandum signed by President Donald Trump. Saturday, Senator sending 2,000 National Guardsmen to disperse protests sparking by immigration raids. What are your thoughts on Tom Homan and his aggressive stance against Californian officials? Also, do you think the protests are helping or hurting in the fight against immigration policies? Now is the time to chime in and join the conversation. Give us a call, 713-440-8870.
I go with this story. My initial reaction is a little different than even the question you're asking. What I think this did was really highlight the silos of information we get as a populace these days. Because depending on who you're following, where you get your news, you may have a very different idea of what was going on in California, which I think is so fascinating. If you're following more conservative news, these were protests that were out of control and the president had to step in and stop what was going on. If you follow more liberal news, you're hearing they were peaceful protests, and by sending out the National Guard and doing this, the president incited these riots to get bigger and more violent. But it's interesting how diverse the news coverage has been on this.
But the proof ultimately is in the pudding, right? Mm-hmm. So if it was by one newscast, say conservative newscast, if it was a big violent protest, then where's the violence? And where are the bodies? Where are the guns going? I mean, where's the proof of that? Because from what I saw, the proof leans more toward a peaceful protest.
But, I mean, Celeste, you were even showing us a video on your phone earlier of a news reporter whose car, or their news van,
was demonstrated. Well, you know, before we go there, I do think it's very interesting when we look at these things from a national level. We always wonder, how does this affect us locally? And Governor Greg Abbott praised President Donald Trump's response, writing on social media that, quote, an organized assault has been waged against federal law enforcement officials. It's time to put an end to it and allow federal officials to fully enforce the laws of the United States. Abbott wrote that yesterday on Sunday. To your point, Ernie and Frank, yes, former Houston reporter for Fox 26, Matthew Seedorf, is now out in Fox LA. He covered back in 2020 the George Floyd unrest protest here in Houston, and now he's in LA covering this situation. And yes, they parked their work truck, a brand new work car, Ford Expedition, and it was completely ransacked, burnt. They stole everything out of it. All of the windows were shattered. And I think it's less about the messaging, but when we look at this also from, again, looking at this just from a policy and government perspective, when we're living in such partisan times, something that y'all mentioned was the messaging. And the problem is when we're living in such partisan times, you have a president who is saying, no, this is what is happening. And you have a governor saying, no, this is what's happening. Right. And it becomes a he said, she said situation. And truly, we are left to make these decisions for ourselves. Yeah. We're left taking sides.
And later on, we are going to talk someone about the whole policy, presidential orders, and all of that. So we're just kind of taking this slant on it right now. Remember the number, 713-440-8870. Steve is on the phone from Cyprus. Steve, what's on your mind?
Good morning. I wanted to come. A significant factor was the fact that the local police did not come to support or rescue the ICE agent for hours. Mm-hmm. That alone justifies the National Guard, I believe. I'm at least pleased that you guys aren't calling this a mostly peaceful demonstration. And if you were watching live coverage on television this weekend, there's no he said, she said. The violence was right there in front of you.
But when did the violence start? Well, it's chicken or the egg is from what I'm getting, depending on where you're looking at it. And I'm asking you because I don't know actually. What's your take on that?
Well, you have ICE officers doing their jobs, detaining criminals, and protesters intervene. There's little doubt the source of the violence there.
Okay, Steve, thank you for that. And we are curious to what other people think. Give us a call, 713-440-8870. Frank, I feel like I cut you off a few minutes ago to give the number and take the call.
No, I think Celeste makes a good point, and I was curious about what you were just asking. What is the timeline? When did his car, the news guy's car, get ransacked and burned?
Yes.
Right. Was it after the National Guard showed up? I mean, I guess my question is, did the National Guard showing up escalate
Gavin
the whole
Newsom
protest
implies
to
it did.
violence. Yes.
So,
I don't know. I don't know the answer.
I also want to clarify one thing. I think that one of the issues and the reason people are protesting, Steve said, ICE is going to detain criminals. And we have to be very careful when we say that verbiage, because what people are protesting is the fact that people that have different immigration status are showing up to their hearing and are being arrested. Mm-hmm. And I think that is the difference between mass deportation of people that are showing up to their immigration hearing versus going in and raiding what an investigation knows to be a group of criminals. Yeah. And that is this is so nuanced, this is so complex, and this is where, as an American citizen, I wish our government, President Trump and Gavin Newsom, on both sides would get it together and work together. Right. Because we go back.
That's Gavin's point, though. Newsom has said that. He should have, and we'll ask our expert in a little bit.
Yes, and we'll speak to an expert.
But he says that he, by law, should have been notified, and they should have worked together. And we'll find Trump out just did his thing.
Today does seem to be the Steve Day on Hello Houston. We have another call at 713-440-8870. It's also from Steve, a different Steve. This Steve is from the 5th Ward. Steve, what's on your mind?
Yes, the protest that's going on about the immigration proceedings that I see. My question is, why are people protesting for people that's breaking the law?
Mm-hmm. And I think Celeste was just addressing that. I think it comes down to an understanding of when the term criminal is being used, what was their criminal behavior? If they're here and they're going lawfully to their hearings about their status, I think that's where concern comes up, that they are being corralled and picked up when they are trying to rectify the situation. I don't know if I'm hitting that exactly right, but
and one of the big things about immigration when we look at it, and this was a major voting key component when people voted for President Trump, was immigration was very important. And so there is no doubt if somebody comes into this country illegally, absolutely, we look at what that process looks like for them to go back. But when somebody is here legally and they are showing up to their hearing, that is
even
essentially
the
protest.
Illegally, but they're showing up to their hearing. And I think that's where it gets
the status.
Nuanced. Right.
Nuanced.
Their status isn't what it should be. They're going to their hearings. They're trying to rectify the situation. And I think that by having these raids or pickups or arrests outside of courts, it's going to deter people from trying to rectify situations. And it's like they go back into the community and hide from being recognized and found. Thank you, Steve, for your call, 713-440-8870. James from the Woodlands is on the line now. James, what's on your mind?
Yes. Well, when President Trump was first in office, he didn't call up National Guard troops when there was assault on the Capitol. And there were police officers injured, some of them killed in the aftermath. He was not Mr. Law and Order on that day. But now, suddenly, he's calling up troops in California for his immigration policy. Now, how I understand it, it's usually the governor, the CEO of the state, that requests National Guard troops to the president, not the other way around. So I suspect that Donald Trump is doing something to benefit himself as opposed to enforcing the law. I think California is capable of doing it.
I think you make an excellent point.
Yes, and our next guest actually will dive into that, exactly the order and how it's supposed to happen.
I did read a lot of texts on Facebook of people saying, where was the National Guard during the Capitol riots?
Right.
So if you're going to use the National Guard effectively, you should do it when it's needed, not when it's not needed, unless you're trying to make a political point. And I think what James is saying is it seemed like to him and seems to a lot of people to have been more of a political point than something that was done to preserve safety.
And this is the first time since the 1960s that the federal government has called out the National Guard troops without a governor's consent. So this is not something that happens often, where the president steps in and goes over essentially what the governor is.
Was that Ohio State?
I'll let you look at that, and I'm going to say thank you, James, for calling in. The number 713-440-8870. Keithan is on the line from the South Side. Keithan, what's on your mind?
You guys just covered a lot of it, but I really do think that he's antagonizing people, and everybody.
When you
wants
say
to go
he, hold on
with,
1 second. When you say he's
antagonizing, the president.
Okay.
The president.
Okay, continue.
Okay. So you have a lot of people that are losing their status. People that normally thought it was fine. They're going through the process. They go report when they're supposed to report, and then they're getting arrested after that. But you keep saying that you're arresting criminals. You weren't ready to help California when they needed help with funding. You're trying to stop their funding, but you're quick to send the National Guard into L.A. I lived in Los Angeles. They're a different type of people. You know what I mean? So they are protesting peacefully, but this can go bad like really quick. So I don't think he has good intentions, and I think that the American people need to stop falling into the thing of saying that they're here illegal. Maybe they are, but for whatever reason they are here, they're here, and we have laws to follow. And if they're adhering to those laws and coming to the courts and reporting when they're supposed to report, you shouldn't arrest those people right outside of the courthouse where they think they're safe.
Keithan, thank you very much for calling and sharing your point of view. We are encouraging all of our listeners. Share. What do you think on this topic? 713-440-8870. To Keithan's point, I think that's also what Gavin Newsom was saying. I was watching an interview with him yesterday where he was saying, we had it under control. There was a protest going on, but it was within the realms of what they expect from a protest in L.A. And then that the bringing in of the National Guard lit the flame under the protesters and made it become much more excited, the situation, where, yes, it was still the protesters who may have caused this violence, but what ignited them to raise to that level as opposed to a peaceful protest. That I would love to see more reporting on to get a really good understanding of it.
Right. Yep. And you can join the conversation at 713-440-8870. We have a call from Alvin from 3rd Ward on this topic. Welcome to Hello Houston, Alvin.
All right, guys. How you doing?
Doing well. What's your comment?
Okay, so basically what's happening here, this is very clear. Donald Trump being the agent of chaos, yet again, not being a president, faithfully executing the laws, and bringing tranquility to the land, is essentially creating campaign content for the midterm elections that he's surely to lose. This is all being orchestrated, and we know what's going on. And the last thing I want to make, the point I want to make, we keep talking about gangs and law and order. The Proud Boys is a white gang, and Donald Trump actually pardoned a white gang that stormed the Capitol, destroyed property, and tried to overthrow the government. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Alvin. 713-440-8870. Let's take one more call on this for right now. Let's go to John. John, what's on your mind?
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
I agree with the caller that just called in, but the whole thing I want to emphasize to everybody is this is what happens when you have a weak Democratic Party. They had the chance to put this guy in jail. They had the chance to select a Supreme Court justice, and they keep just playing around. This is what happens when we have weak leaders because we're leading from behind, and we've allowed this to happen. Everything else is somebody will always be wrong, somebody will always be right. But the fact is, the Democratic Party miserably failed everybody, and this is the result.
John, thank you for that point of view. And again, remember, we're interested in your thoughts. 713-440-8870.
Coming up on Hello Houston, we will deep dive with UH Law Center professor Emily Berman about the ICE protest, and we will continue to take your calls at 713-440-8870. This is Hello Houston on News 88.7.
Hi, I'm Craig Cohen, the host of Houston Matters. Join me weekday mornings at 9 or at your leisure on your podcast feed for your daily guide to the people, places, issues, and ideas that define Greater Houston. From politics to the economy, energy to the environment, healthcare to education to transportation and beyond. If it matters to Houston, it matters to us. Check us out wherever you get your podcasts or live on the air weekdays at 9 a.m. right here on News 88.7.
Houston Public Media brings to you PBS World, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on TV 8.6. Experience the personal connection behind the headlines with programming devoted to telling stories that humanize complex issues. PBS World helps us understand the movements, conflicts, and cultures that connect us all. PBS World on TV 8.6 and online at houstonpublicmedia.org.
Elevate your impact with Houston Public Media. Today is New Member Monday. Now is the perfect moment to make a difference by becoming a new member. Your first donation supports trusted news, educational documentaries, and enriching arts on air. Join us in our mission to inform, educate, and inspire Houston. Visit houstonpublicmedia.org/donate and make your first contribution today. Together, let's shape a future filled with quality programming and community engagement. Thank you for being a vital part of Houston Public Media.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Foster LLP, delivering immigration legal services tailored for the employer's size, location, and industry. More at fosterglobal.com, U.S. and global immigration services. Support comes from Blake Hillegeist Real Estate, independent commercial and residential real estate broker with over 30 years experience guiding clients through economic downturns, realty challenges, and everyday life situations. More at blakesellshouston.com.
Reporting.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now back to Ernie Manouse, Celeste Díaz Schurman, and Frank Billingsley.
As we were just discussing, over the weekend, President Trump deployed 2,000 California National Guard members to quell the unrest that developed over the weekend in Los Angeles after anti-ICE protests escalated into violent confrontations between police officers and demonstrators. The protest came after the Department of Homeland Security said it arrested over 100 people accused of being undocumented immigrants in Los Angeles. What presidential powers does President Trump have in this situation? Is he allowed to conduct these types of mass deportations? Professor Emily Berman is a constitutional scholar with expertise in executive power and national security law at the University of Houston Law Center, and she joins us now to discuss this situation. Hello, Emily, and welcome to Hello Houston.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And if you have any questions for Emily about the protest against the ICE raids and the president's deployment of the National Guard, you can call us now at 713-440-8870.
Emily, right. I'd love to start the conversation just by finding out your understanding from where you sit of what is happening in L.A.
Yeah, so there are what I understood to be largely peaceful protests that the LAPD publicly said it had under control. And despite that, and despite no request from Governor Gavin Newsom, who is the commander-in-chief of the California National Guard, the president decided to invoke his authority to nationalize the California Guard and to deploy them to pursue essentially a protective mission to ensure protection of ICE officers, detention facilities, and other aspects of the immigration missions that the federal government is pursuing.
Now, Emily, what type of intel would President Trump be receiving that would be essentially different from what Governor Newsom is saying?
I mean, it's unlikely that there is a whole lot of difference. I suspect that he was hearing through ICE that they were facing mass objections to carrying out ICE's deportation efforts. But again, I think the LAPD's explicitly, and this is no like squishy lefty organization, the LAPD said, we've got this under control. There are protests all the time. We're trained to handle this. There's no need to send in guard troops and potentially, as the governor said, inflame the situation and make things actually worse than they already are.
As we'll dig deeper into this conversation, I just want to establish at the start, the president does have the right to do what he did?
The president has the right to, yes, I would, in short, yes, the president does have the authority to do this, but the authority under which he's acting imposes some significant constraints on the role that these guard troops can play. So, not to get too deep in the legal weeds, but there's a statute called the Posse Comitatus Act, which says that the military may not be used for everyday typical law enforcement operations. That means the federal government's troops cannot arrest people, they can't conduct searches and seizures, they can't be involved in detention operations. They can supply logistical support, potentially protections of federal agents or federal facilities. And in fact, there are thousands of National Guard troops at the border and have been for years under both Republican and Democratic presidents, providing those kinds of logistical support operations for the Border Patrol and for ICE. So this is, the authority is the same. But I would say, it's not the president completely overstepping the legal bounds. It is, in fact, a violation of what I would call the norms of the way the president typically has employed federal forces and his authority to deploy National Guard troops.
Well, Gavin Newsom is already saying that he's going to have a lawsuit against the Trump administration. So what is his legal standing, do you think, in this?
Yeah, so the statute that the president has invoked to activate these guard troops on a federal basis says that the orders given to these troops should be facilitated through the governor's office. And that didn't happen here. Now, this is not something that has ever been litigated, so we don't know, explicitly what that requirement of facilitation actually requires. But it is quite unusual for the federal government to send troops into a state over the objections of the state governor. In fact, it hasn't happened since the 1960s when the president was enforcing the desegregation orders from Brown versus Board of Education. And the state governors were actually actively preventing schools from integrating using their own National Guard troops. So it's only in these very explicit constitutional violation situations where state or local authorities are thwarting the execution of federal law. That's the kind of circumstance in which the federal government has come in and sort of overridden local law enforcement agencies. But here, that's not happened. And so I think Governor Newsom is well within his rights to articulate the ways in which this is a new and troubling use of this kind of authority, and perhaps, depending on how this statute eventually gets interpreted, perhaps procedurally flawed as well.
Well, you mentioned that it might be new and troubling, but was there a breach of state sovereignty? Was there an actual legal breach that happened when the president called in these troops?
Yeah, again, I would say from a sort of layman's understanding, yes. We usually allow states to conduct their own law enforcement operations. The federal government is not permitted to give orders to state and local law enforcement. That is something that is explicitly unconstitutional without the agreement and cooperation of the state governments. Here, again, I think because this is such a novel use of this authority, we haven't heard yet from the courts exactly how this is going to be interpreted. But it's certainly stepping on the governor's toes in a way that we don't usually see. And I think, sort of flouting the spirit, if not necessarily the explicit law of the idea of state sovereignty.
We are speaking with Emily Berman, who is with the University of Houston Law Center, talking about presidential powers, the National Guard, executive orders. And we'd love to know what you'd think, or if you have a question for Emily, give us a call, 713-440-8870. I want to go back to a term you used a few minutes ago, which I think is the most troubling in all of this as we try and navigate what's going on both nationally and in often places locally. The concept of, you said, norms. This is the norm. This is the norm. Legally, norms, I guess, mean nothing. It's just a sense of behavior we've done. Are we at the end of a time where we can rely on norms and things all need to be legislated and written into law?
Well, we'll see. I mean, I think that lots and lots and lots of norms have been violated.
Well, you say norms violated. Is a norm violated or just not acknowledged? Violated sounds like it is legally binding and they're going against it, where an understanding of the term norms means just everyone tends to do it. So is violated the right word?
Well, I mean, I suppose it depends on, you can violate your parents' rules, you can violate moral principles. Those aren't necessarily legally binding, and yet we think of them as something that should constrain behavior. And usually those, whether it's violations or transgressions or however you want to describe it, are enforced not through the official mechanisms of law, but through things like public approbation and objections by the general public, or by, in the first President Trump term, we saw a lot of pushback from within his own administration, right? The Secretary of Defense said, we think it's a really bad idea to deploy federal troops against largely peaceful protests. And so it didn't happen there. And so now that we don't have those sort of, guardrails is the term we often hear employed, we don't have those in place in this second Trump administration, it makes it much easier to simply disregard those norms. Yeah. And it's up to the American people to decide if they're going to stand for it.
Now, we're using the word violation, however, when we're looking at this law, but is it more of an interpretation that President Trump is interpreting the law to make it essentially work for him? And it's almost, in a way, not so much a violation, but when we look at the Posse Comitatus Act that was enacted in 1878, we also saw him, enact other immigration procedures in the Alien Act. Could it simply be that our president is interpreting the Constitution and the laws and the policy around this in a way that is completely legal, but just being interpreted in a different way? Not necessarily violating anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's certainly interpreting it in new and different ways and adopting extraordinarily broad conceptions of ideas like, for example, this particular statute authorized the president to federalize the National Guard when there's a, quote, rebellion against the authority of the U.S. government. So we see the word rebellion used in a new and different way. The same way that we've heard them use in the Alien Enemies Act cases, the word invasion. We're being invaded by immigrants. And so it is sort of the president taking words that have particular meaning to particular people and sort of imposing his own views on what those words mean. The courts in some instances have pushed back on that. We've seen lots of district courts say, you cannot use the Alien Enemies Act here because this is not an invasion, because an invasion requires a government of a country to send military troops across the border. That's not happening here. So whether that will ultimately be the interpretation of that act once it gets up to the Supreme Court, we don't know. But there was, I have to say that during the Biden administration, particularly at the beginning of the Biden administration, there were a lot of legal scholars and commentators saying there are a lot of laws out there that give the president emergency authority, that don't define what an emergency is, that don't specify whether the courts have the power to disagree with the president if the president has declared there to be an emergency. And so people sort of advocated, let's clarify some of these laws and put some constraints on presidential discretion in these quote unquote emergency situations. And that didn't happen. And I think we're seeing the results of that. You can also point to the tariffs that President Trump imposed under the Emergency Economic Powers Act. Those were meant to be, that's a power that he has claimed because there is a quote unquote emergency arising out of trade deficit. I don't think that meets the definition that anyone would give of the kind of emergency that statute was first enacted to address. And time will tell whether the courts will be willing to second guess the president's definition of these words. Historically, especially in sort of these national security contexts, the courts have been quite deferential to the president and his decisions about what's necessary for the national security.
We are speaking, I'm going to jump in here. Oh, sorry. Finish your thought.
I was just going to say whether this president is going to continue to be afforded that deference is yet to be seen.
I just want to remind everyone we're talking to constitutional scholar Emily Berman from the University of Houston Law Center. If you have questions for Emily, give us a call, 713-440-8870. Danielle is on the line from Deer Park. Danielle, what's your question?
Hi, thank you for taking my call. What I wanted to say was, when you look at the videos that are coming out of LA, overwhelmingly, if not all, of the aggression is coming from the side of the people who are presenting themselves as ICE agents or FBI agents. They've used flashbangs, tear gas, other types of ammunition. There's a video of the Australian reporter who was shot in the back as her back was turned, So I'd really like to know what basis Trump feels he has to imply that there is an insurrection or riot, because that is not what has been presented to the public and has been seen. When the January 6th rioters broke in and actually murdered people and intended to kill people in the government, he was supporting that. So as long as it worked for him, he didn't have a problem with it. But when he feels that it goes against what he wants to do, he thinks that he has carte blanche to just interpret laws to allow him to do whatever type of aggression he has.
Danielle,
and American people have the right to the free assembly.
Yeah. Danielle, thank you for that. Emily, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a great point. We can really get bogged down in the weeds of what's an emergency and what's a rebellion, but the fact is that this president is sending federal troops to oversee or surveil or potentially interfere with First Amendment protected protest activity by the American people. And that is simply a significant red flag in any democracy. I think the point about, which side the violence is coming from, there's some concern among commentators. It could be that this is meant to simply be a provocative action, that the president is trying to provoke violence so that he can, crack down on it, or, declare that the Insurrection Act is in force and use the federal government troops even more decisively.
Yeah.
So,
I don't think it's
keeping that point in mind is important.
Yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence that he deployed the National Guard with a Democratic governor in place. I don't think that. I don't. If it was Governor Abbott, I don't think he would have done it. I don't think he will do it in a red state.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I think he knows that with respect. I mean, I'm no political analyst, but with respect to his supporters, picking these kind of fights is good for him.
Right.
And he had a pretty bad week last week, and so this is quite a convenient change of subject for him, I think.
And we did get a comment on our YouTube comments from Dark One. Says an interpretation can be a violation. Just because you interpret a law one way does not mean the government, the courts, agree. And we have seen that. The courts have stopped multiple policies and things that President Trump has tried to move forward, and they've said, wait a minute, hold on, you can't do that. What do you think will happen next, given past situations like this, Emily? What is next most likely to happen in this situation?
Well, far be it from me to predict. But what I hope is that this incident has driven home to Americans how important it is to maintain the peacefulness of their protests, to not give the government any excuse for this kind of deployment. And so hopefully things will calm down in LA, and that will be the end of it. But I worry that with all the immigration enforcement going on across the country, with the protests that are coming up on January 14th, the No King's Day protests, that I fear that we might see more of this in other places around the country.
To your point, we're getting a text saying Mexican flags, Palestinian flags. This is not troops versus U.S. citizens. It's troops versus an invasion. I'm not sure I agree with that, but to your point about Americans understanding that we need to protest peacefully and keep it that way, making up protests more inflammatory with certain flags or posters or, I guess, whatever you want to use, is probably not the better way to go these days.
Yeah, I mean, I hesitate to say that because people should be free to exercise their First Amendment rights and to engage in peaceful expression of any kind. But given the realities, and given that the White House has characterize these protests as violent mobs, I think it's important that the video tells the story that that's not what's going on.
And it's interesting that this person that texted us about Mexican flags, Palestinian flags, this is not troops versus U.S. citizens. These people could be U.S. citizens waving a Mexican flag or waving a Palestinian flag.
They were there to support their neighbors.
To show, we have to be very careful when we're looking at things not to make assumptions.
Absolutely. And there are plenty of American citizens that are from Palestine or from Mexico. They could be both citizens and supporting their country of origin.
Professor Emily Berman is a constitutional scholar with expertise in executive power and national security law at the University of Houston Law Center. Emily, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
After the break, Ernie will recap the Tonys. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
Any protests over the Tonys?
In just 30 years, the city of Eagle Mountain, Utah has grown from 250 people to 60,000.
It's mainly a suburban commuter town, or you're working from home or an at-home business.
I'm Kai Rizdal. Why that kind of population growth might mean you have to get your hair cut in somebody's basement. That's next time on Marketplace.
Tune in tonight at 6:30 on News 88.7.
Tonight on Houston Public Media TV 8, Antiques Roadshow travels to Albuquerque to reveal some classic items from the past, including a 1962 Fender Stratocaster and a 1965 Beatles signed photo. Tonight at 7 on TV 8.
It can be hard to stay informed about what's happening in our city, our state, and across the country. That's why Houston Public Media makes it easier.
Everything you hear on News 88.7 is powered by you, not advertisers. 80% of our funding comes from our Houston community.
That's what makes public media different. It's community funded and always here for you when you need it.
Join that community now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from attorney mediator Ron Bankston, providing in-person, video conferencing, and hybrid mediation and arbitration services. More information is available at ronbankston.com. Support comes from Uptown Appliance Repair, now open and ready to service Houston's residential and commercial appliance needs while staying committed to the health and safety of the community. More at uptownappliancerepair.com. Support comes from Signify Business Cash by Wells Fargo. With this business credit card, cardholders can earn rewards on business purchases with no caps or categories to track. Learn more at wellsfargo.com/signify. Terms apply.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now back to Ernie Manouse, Celeste Díaz Schurman, and Frank Billingsley.
We will get back into some more of the heavy news and topics once we get to the top of the hour. We're going to lighten things up here a little bit for a moment. Depending on where you sit, if this might not be light, but
a little palate cleanser.
Last night, Broadway's biggest night, the 2025 Tony Awards took place. Cynthia Erivo hosted it. I don't know how many of you all watched it. I believe all of us watched it.
Yes.
I watched it.
What did you think of Cynthia Erivo to start off with?
I thought she did a fabulous job.
I did too.
I don't think anyone did a bad job by any means.
It was a great program.
It was a great program.
What I liked about it was she brought her own flair to it because it's Patrick Neil Harris. Is that Neil Patrick Harris?
Neil Patrick Harris does it often.
And it kind of had gotten to me unpopular. But I thought he did a good job the first couple times, and afterwards it was like, okay.
Ariana DeBose has done it too now, and so they kind of mixed it up a bit. I think the interesting thing, and we'll get into the awards in a minute, Cynthia Erivo, I think in the terrestrial press has gotten a bit of a rough handling lately as being serious, domineering, full of requests kind of thing. Not outrageous, but has had a very strong presence out there. And I think sometimes in the media that can be hard for people. And I think she did a wonderful job of making herself relatable. Her warmth came through, her personality came through. And I think that's what Cynthia Erivo needed right now. And I thought it was wonderful. I thought she did a fabulous job.
Yeah, all her jokes hit.
Yeah.
You know,
well, maybe not Oprah's. Oprah looked a little, I mean, I know when she gave Oprah a car, I guarantee you Oprah thought she was getting an honorary Tony. When she got that bag, I thought she thought, I've made a toy car and some Junior Mints. You had to watch to know what we're talking about there. Big moment of the night for me. Probably my voice is a little rough today because I was yelling a couple times. I saw Sunset Boulevard on Broadway. I thought Nicole Scherzinger was amazing. I know everyone loves Audra McDonald. I love Audra McDonald. I saw her in Gypsy. I thought that was the biggest horse race of the night. Obviously, so did the Tonys because they kept it for the next to the last award of the evening. And Nicole Scherzinger won as Norma Desmond in Sunset Boulevard, and I could not have been happier.
I think she deserved it.
Yeah.
I mean,
absolutely.
I saw Audra McDonald in Gypsy. She's great. It's not like an Andrew Lloyd Webber musical where you have to carry the entire 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
And you really have to have a voice that lasts and presence. And I think Nicole probably deserved it.
Yeah. I think also another thing, Sunset Boulevard also won Best Revival. And I think the reason it did is it was something different, where Gypsy, a stalwart of the Broadway theater, and they do an amazing production of it, and it's really good, and it's very solid, and it's Gypsy. This sunset is the future of musical theater. Maybe if I can
I
be
love
that
that.
bold.
Yeah,
You don't want to spend any money on sets.
I would say, for me, my big highlight
Your
last
takeaway?
night was Jasmine Amy Rogers, Betty Boop, Houstonian. We had her on Hello Houston. I took my daughter to the Tommy Tune Awards on Friday night. So then getting to watch the Tonys and seeing that, I thought was just so exciting. And it all just kind of came together. And the fact that they had the Tommy Tunes and then they had, the Tonys in the same weekend was fun. It was just
and
cool.
also Houston was represented both with Jasmine Amy Rogers and Renee Elise Gouldsberry, who was with the Hamilton group and also talked about the teacher winning the award. Earlier in the evening on Pluto TV, if you could figure it out, it's always so clumsy. They run what they call Tony Awards Act 1, where they give a lot of the other awards out and stuff. And our own Houstonian, Renee, was one of the hosts of that. And so she hosted that. And so it was a very Houston night for us at the Tony Awards.
Do you think that George Clooney got snubbed?
No.
Oh,
that
because
was
remember
another
we were talking about $900 a ticket. The Good Night and Good Luck on CNN on Saturday night. The show is making $3 million a week.
Did you watch it on CNN Saturday night?
I watched about 30 minutes of it.
Did you see it?
No, I didn't see it.
There was a lot going on in my house. My house was like a clubhouse this weekend, people coming and going the whole time. And I got parts of it. I thought it was great. I think it's a very much you have to care about the topic to get involved. It's very relevant. Please go back. You can find it online now if you've got a CNN, or I think it's Paramount Plus has it.
I want your opinion on something.
Max has
I want
it.
your opinion on Cole Escola for Oh Mary, which he wrote and starred in. He won Best Actor.
Yes, they won Best Actor.
And he's in... he went up in his dress, and he is non-binary, and he goes by they.
Right.
But he did have to make a choice of being in the Best Actor, not Best Actress column. He had to. They asked him. They said, you're non-binary.
Where do you?
Where do you put? Where do we put you? And he's not the first non-binary that's.
Well, a couple
he is
years
the first
ago,
to win.
Both.
Yeah.
First to win.
Both the Best Actor and Best Supporting Actor in a musical were both non-binaries.
Yeah.
And so it's a very interesting world
That is a very
we come
I
into.
mean, should they maybe just have a best acting person?
Well, they're doing that in other awards now, and there are 2 winners in a category of best performers, and so that's I think how they're trying to figure that. But I thought I saw Oh Mary. I did not see Cole in the role, but I saw that interpretation of the role because Cole's understudy was in. Brilliant, wonderful.
Really quickly, Hamilton. Original
The
cast.
Hamilton 10th anniversary
What'd you think?
of that, all of them back. I thought they did a great job with it. I think as we were talking in the office, it's very hard when you're doing musical theater because these pieces don't usually stand as just songs. They're developments of a show and a plot line, and so to pluck things out and put them together. But I really kind of enjoyed it.
I loved it.
It was fun, a little nostalgia.
I'm a big Hamilton fan. It was beautiful. Coming up on Hello Houston, we'll continue diving into the top stories of the day. Stay with us for the second hour of Hello Houston.
Stay tuned. There's more Hello Houston on the way with Ernie Manouse, Celeste Díaz Schurman, and Frank Billingsley. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at HoustonPublicMedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Support comes from Artec House with Rolling Stone Presents Amplified, the immersive rock experience, highlighting the history of rock and roll and featuring over 300 artists whose music changed the world. Tickets at artechhouse.com.
82 degrees at the University of Houston. I'm Tiffany Taylor. Mostly cloudy, high of 95, 50% chance of showers and thunderstorms for our afternoon. This is your NPR station, KUHF Houston News 88.7. A service of the University of Houston. It's noon.
Just ahead on this hour of Hello Houston, President Trump's banning the nationals of 12 countries, including Afghanistan, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen, from entering the United States. I'm Ernie Manouse.
And I'm Celeste Díaz Schurman. We'll also hear the latest episode of Party Politics co-host Brandon Rottinghaus' new feature, Techsperts, in which he breaks down Houston City Council.
And I'm Frank Billingsley. Plus, we'll also talk with Denise O'Neill, the executive director and founder of the Fade to Black Arts Festival, which is running now through Saturday.
And we want to hear from you, so give us a call or send us a text at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us on our YouTube channel. Just go to houstonpublicmedia.org and click the big orange banner.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. There's a heavy police presence in downtown Los Angeles a day after President Trump called in the National Guard to confront crowds who took to the streets this weekend to protest the president's immigration crackdown. NPR's Steve Futterman has the latest.
Many streets were completely cordoned off. Police were in complete control. Some areas were even cordoned off to the media, even with a press pass, which is quite unusual. Most streets have been reopened, although there's a very clear police presence. There's one key street that's shut down. That's Alameda Street. And that's where much of the violence, the confrontational protests have taken place, especially last night. But most of LA pretty much back to normal this morning with some very clear police presence.
That's NPR's Steve Futterman reporting. California Governor Gavin Newsom says the state did not ask for the National Guard's deployment, accused President Trump of intentionally stoking unrest, and now he says the state plans to sue. On the grounds of the White House, reporters asked Trump if border czar Tom Homan should arrest Governor Newsom. Trump said that he would. He also had remarks about the protesters.
People that are causing the problem are professional agitators, they're insurrectionists.
Critics accused Trump of unlawfully calling in the National Guard to face the protesters, but failing to do so when many of his supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. Citizens from a dozen nations are now facing a full travel ban from the U.S. Tighter restrictions are also imposed on travelers from 7 additional countries. NPR's Luke Garrett has more.
President Trump's ban centers mainly on citizens from African and Middle Eastern countries. The White House says these nations harbor terrorists, fail to cooperate with visa security, and don't ID travelers well enough. They include Afghanistan, Myanmar, Haiti, Iran, Sudan, and Yemen, among 6 other countries. Visa applications from these citizens will now be rejected unless they meet a narrow set of exceptions. But according to the Associated Press, the Trump order does not roll back already issued visas to citizens of these now banned nations. 7 other countries will have restricted entry to the United States. This is the first travel ban Trump has ordered during his second term. During his first, Trump ordered 3 other travel bans against predominantly Muslim nations with varying success in the courts. Luke Garrett, NPR News, Washington.
Amazon says it plans to spend $20 billion on 2 data center complexes in Pennsylvania. The Associated Press reports the sites are designed to meet growing demand for artificial intelligence products. One of the complexes is due to be built adjacent to a nuclear power plant that came under federal scrutiny over an arrangement to essentially plug into the power plant. U.S. stocks trading higher this hour. The Dow is up 46 points at 42,809. From Washington, this is NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Gabrielle Dawkins. School choice will be the topic of discussion later tonight in Missouri City. News 88.7's Shawnee Chong tells us a nonprofit will be hosting a forum on school vouchers.
The Frederick Douglass Freedom Alliance will host the forum at the Christian Bible Church on Texas Parkway in Missouri City. State representatives and local education leaders will conduct panel discussions to help families understand the school voucher program. Under the new law, eligible families can receive roughly $10,000 to cover private school tuition or educational expenses like textbooks. The event is free, open to the public, and will include dinner. Registration can be found on the Frederick Douglass Freedom Alliance website. The event will be from 6 to 8:30 p.m. I'm Shawnee Chung, News 88.7.
President Trump's new travel policy banning citizens from a dozen nations takes effect today. Ali Zakaria is an immigration attorney in Houston. He says since the city is one of the most diverse in the country, the new policy may have a big impact on locals. He also says it's unclear why Trump chose these specific countries, which included mostly African and Middle Eastern countries, but he has an idea.
When you look at the list, you can tell that these are non-European, non-Christian majority countries. And so maybe that's one reason why they're on this list.
In addition to the 12 banned countries, 7 face restrictions. Houston's famous Be Someone graffiti is back. The message atop a bridge on I-45 coming into town was changed to promote cryptocurrency back in March. A video posted to the Instagram page, Lurking Houston, shows 2 people who say they weren't the original artist changing the graffiti back to the iconic Be Someone sign. It's currently 82 degrees on the UH campus. A 50% chance of thunderstorms and showers after 1 p.m. I'm Gabrielle Dawkins, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Subaru and its retailers, partnering with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society this June to give blankets and messages of hope to patients facing cancer. Learn more at Subaru.com/care.
From Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manouse, Celeste Díaz Schurman, and Frank Billingsley.
There is a lot to talk about.
Yes, we had a very full first hour, and we've got another full hour for you coming up right now. In a few minutes on Hello Houston, we're going to be listening to our next installment of Techsperts, which is Brandon Rottinghause's segment right here. He's our co-host of Party Politics and a professor of UH. He'll be talking about how city council works. That's coming up in just a little bit. We want to hear from you. Remember, as you just heard, you can call us, you can text us, and you can watch us on YouTube. Remember, when you're watching the show on YouTube, like, subscribe, and ring that bell. We were saying that in the first hour, we talked a lot about the protests going on across the country and especially in LA, and we got a lot of response to that.
We did, but before we go there, we did get a Tony's comment.
Oh, what did we get?
That, before we jump to that.
I perked right up when I heard
Yes,
Tony.
we did get a Tony's comment. David from Oak Forest said, one of the things that impressed me was the difference between the Tony's acceptance speeches and the ones at the Oscars. You can really tell the difference when it comes to people who are more skilled at having to memorize an entire show at a time.
That's so true.
I agree with David. I felt like watching the Tonys, there was definitely a much more fresh feeling, polished.
Yeah.
I felt like there was a lot more, I don't know, polished might be the right word.
It's the difference of these folks are all used to being in front of a live audience.
Every night.
Where mostly movie actors, it's a take over and over again, different. It's a different set of muscles you use.
Yes.
And so when they can walk up on that stage and talk to their brethren, and let me tell you, Radio City Music Hall is a big hall to present in.
And it was packed.
Packed. Of course, it's going to be packed.
Yeah.
But so I think they have an ease on stage. And I felt there was a real warmth and genuineness.
Yes.
It's a community. Broadway is a very small area when you think about the grand scheme of things. It's a few blocks in the middle of Manhattan, and all of these people work together in this profession. So a lot of people know each other.
They share walls.
They share walls, as we've heard. All right.
Yes.
I know we're supposed to go into the other stuff. I do have to say, Oprah, you didn't need to poke the sleeping bear in the room, which was the Patti LuPone, Audra McDonald, whole Broadway scandal. And Oprah kind of just like,
Got a
Turn
little
that
dig
fork
in.
a little bit,
She
but
got
anyway.
that in.
All
She
right,
did.
so let's put on our serious hats again and talking protests and talking ICE and talking to Celeste.
That's right. So Sandy from Sealy sent us a text that said, it's a political game anytime anything comes up with immigration. I want to remind people that there was a bipartisan bill to fix immigration, and the Republicans killed it. So it could be an election issue for the last election.
That is true.
Good point, Sandy.
Troy from Northeast Houston says, correction. In 1965, when LBJ sent the National Guard to Georgia, he sent them to protect the protesters.
Great point.
Right. Who are they sending this in? And then Jane from Fort Bend. I wish someone would send a picture of Trump eating while people were breaking into the Capitol and assaulting police. If you want to join the conversation or have a comment that you would like to contribute, you can send us a text or give us a call at 713-440-8870.
To clarify Jane's point, too, so that you understand where she's coming from, while January 6th was going on, the story was the president was in the presidential dining room eating and watching it on TV. And that's, I think, what she's referring to. Yeah, interesting. If you have thoughts, comments, as Celeste just said, share them with us. We love to share them with you. This is, as we say, where Houston talks right here on Hello Houston. Okay, back into our news headlines of the day. Celeste, take us away.
Yes, immigration policy continues to flare up. Starting today, nationals of 12 countries, including Afghanistan, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen, will be barred from entering the United States after a Trump administration executive order went into effect at midnight. President Donald Trump said the ban, which primarily targets countries in Africa and the Middle East, is necessary to preserve national security and prevent terrorism in the United States. A similar policy in Trump's first term, which barred foreigners from 6 Muslim-majority countries from entering the country, was reversed by then President Joe Biden. On the campaign trail, Trump promised he would revive this ban. Give us a call. Do you agree with the travel ban, or is this another example of overreach? 713-440-8870.
Thoughts?
Wow. Well, I think a lot of people always point back to the 9/11 terrorist incidents. And most of those men were from Saudi Arabia, which is not on this list. Egypt's not on this list.
Right.
Certainly Qatar is not going to be on the list anytime soon. People come from places. They just come from places,
Right.
And I don't think you just say a whole nation, no one is allowed to come from that nation without more proof. I mean, you don't. What does he have to base all of this on?
I do want to clarify, the new ban does not revoke visas previously issued to people from countries on this list. That's according to the guidance issued on Friday to all U.S. diplomatic missions.
Yeah. It's troubling to me when you make any kind of sweeping movement, and there are good and bad in all people, and to say an entire nation, any of those people coming here must be bad and must be banned from coming. I just think there are better approaches to this.
Well, I still don't understand why he's doing it. I mean, give me a reason. Show me why this particular country.
Well,
is not,
he says that he's keeping our country safe. President Trump says this is a national security issue, and that he is going
that's
to
good enough for you.
Implement
just because he says that. I mean, Afghanistan is being run by the Taliban now, right? So if anyone is probably coming from Afghanistan, very likely they're trying to escape that violence. I mean, that would be my guess, but.
Many immigration experts say the new ban is more carefully crafted and appears to be designed to beat court challenges that hampered the first ban during President's first term by focusing on the visa application process. I believe that if somebody applies for a visa through this, it will be very difficult for it to be accepted. Other countries that were on the list that will have some strict as well. Some strict restrictions around them are, I believe Cuba was on the list.
Yeah,
Sorry,
Cuba is on the list.
Cuba is on the list.
Which, my understanding under LBJ is when if you could touch the soil of America and you were from Cuba, you were automatically a citizen. I mean,
I just think that I have trouble with all sweeping kind of movements. And the same thing that my issue was with Doge was that you go in and you just annihilate an entire organization. I think we need to be more selective in how we do these things. And I think we're seeing it's a different mindset. The mindset is do the big sweep and then figure it out. I like to figure it out and then do the sweep. But I'm not president, so it's not for me to decide. But it is for you to let us know what you think. 713-440-8870. Moving on. Once again, president's in this next story. Veteran ABC News correspondent Terry Moran was suspended Sunday after he posted a highly critical assessment of President Donald Trump and Trump's deputy chief of staff, Stephen Miller, on the social media platform X. On X, Moran said both Trump and Miller are, quote, world-class haters. For Trump, he said, hatred is only a means to an end, and that end is his own glorification. That is his spiritual nourishment. For Miller, on the other hand, he said, hatreds are his spiritual nourishment. He eats his hate. Moran, who landed an Oval Office interview with Trump in April, later deleted the tweet and didn't post anything further. On Sunday morning, the Trump administration officials condemned Moran and said the post reflected poorly on ABC News as an institution. The White House press secretary, Carolyn Leavitt, publicly pushed ABC to discipline Moran. As I understand, Moran has been suspended. ABC, did they make the right move in suspending Moran, or should he be fired? 713-440-8870. If I'd paid attention to my reading, I would have noticed that at the beginning I said what I said at the end again. Yes, he was suspended on Sunday. What are your thoughts? 713-440-8870.
I think this is extremely concerning. I think absolutely this is just by far, this is an overreach. This is one of those things where as journalists, we should be able to hold leaders accountable without being punished. And if you look at other countries and we say that we're so different than other countries, then this should not be happening. The one of the biggest countries that has one of the highest rates for journalists that are murdered is Mexico. Mm-hmm. And to me, here we stand as a country that says, oh, we are the greatest country. Then what is happening right here when you start seeing journalists being suspended for holding leaders accountable or saying essentially some things that are maybe not in favorable of the president?
So where are you on this? Are you against his suspension or against what he said?
Against his suspension.
So
ABC News.
So you think he should be able to say
suspended.
whatever he wants to say?
Absolutely. It's a right.
Yeah, it's pretty strong language.
Right. My thought is, yes, I agree with you, Celeste. Yes, I'm against the suspension. From a practical point of view, as someone in this industry, I would have advised Terry not to post what he posted.
Sure.
But he does have a right to post it. But with free speech also comes responsibility for that speech. And if his organization that employs him and gives him a platform to speak feels he spoke out of turn or more opinion than fact, they have a right to suspend him. I don't think he should have worded it the way he worded it, but I don't think the White House should have any dog in this race. And they should not be telling a media organization what can be done.
Freedom of speech,
right.
101. I mean, the president can make jokes about putting memes as the Pope, and it's just a joke. You know, the head of National Weather Association can pretend like he doesn't know it's hurricane season, and it's just a joke. And yet here you have pretend. You know, to me, it's just the hypocrisy is too much.
Yes, I agree with you on that. But I do think a lesson for all of us is to think before we tweet. I think we teach our children that. And it's not that Terry Moran didn't give factual, he gave opinion.
He gave an
opinion. But he's allowed to have an opinion.
Why did he delete it?
Well, because of the
ABC
firestorm
suspended
following.
him,
Yeah.
Before or after the deletion?
I don't know when he deleted it.
My guess is he thought better of it after putting it out there.
Yes. Now, again, here we have the National Security of Defense sending, HEGSEF sending a tweet to a journalist. And
about what you're doing.
And he just made a mistake. But yet here, clearly, Moran got his emotions got the best of him, and he tweeted something he perhaps should have said and not written, and, he's being suspended.
Yeah. We care and are concerned and want to know what you think about this story. Give us a call, 713-440-8870. To step back to the earlier story we were talking about, with the travel ban, Jeff is on the line from the Woodlands. Jeff, your thoughts on the travel ban issue?
Hey, good afternoon. Thanks for passing me through. There was an initial comment made about, referencing the 2001 attacks and how those individuals came from Saudi Arabia. But I think we could all agree that was, 24 years ago, 20-something, I guess 24. So what has changed between now and then? A lot has changed between now and then. And what we have is the military-industrial complex telling us that there are high or elevated levels of terrorist or potential terrorist activity from these countries, and therefore these people, people from these countries can no longer travel to the U.S. Should there be more of a justification than that? Okay, maybe, but we also have to keep in mind that some of this stuff is confidential, some of this stuff is classified, and we're just not going to know it, right? So where do we put our trust and say, okay, the people who are the experts, at least the people that we think are the experts, are telling us that there are dangers from these countries. And so we have to, at least for now, put a total block. It's not too different than when we see cucumbers or tomatoes, with a health concern, and they all get recalled. We don't individually test every tomato to see which one we're going to recall. We just recall all of them.
Okay, but let me remind you that Trump did the same thing in his first term, and Biden reversed it. And now Trump is putting it back. So if the threat was clearly, and I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt, maybe there's some stuff that we're not allowed to know, and Trump knows it, but Biden, ignored it? I mean, it's almost like they're playing games with this. We're going to ban these countries. No, we're not. Yes, we are. No, depending on who's in charge. So that's why I say I would like to have a little more information about why these particular countries are being singled out.
Jeff, thank you for your call and your thoughts. 713-440-8870. He hit on something that I don't think we talk enough about, and it was the idea of trust. And I think what that gets to for me is why this sums up for me why it's so disturbing or concerning when the president tweets jokes or shares mistruths or says something and people say, well, that's just the way he talks. That's just his rhetoric. That's how he jokes. Yeah. This, I think, falls to the bottom. It's trust. We have to be able to trust that our leader is doing the honest, right things. And when they blur that line, when a spokesperson comes out and says there were this many people at an event when you can see a picture and it shows it wasn't, it starts to erode the trust we have in the top of our government. And without that trust, then you see things fall apart. And so this is something I need to sit with more, but that really hit me.
Well, Newsom said that Donald Trump put out a tweet about the National Guard getting things under control. And he said the timing isn't right. He put the tweet out before the National Guard even got there. So the National Guard did not get it under control. So that's one of his arguments that Trump just put that out there as a blatant lie to say that about what he was going to do was going to get everything under control.
We did receive a text about the ABC
Terry Moran story.
Yes, Terry Moran story, and I want to read that. It says, one of the principles of journalism says objectivity, presenting facts in a neutral and unbiased way, allowing the audience to form their own conclusions. I 100% agree with that, 1,000%. That's something that I personally hold very close to when we are at work. However, I think that it's alarming when the president starts to call for journalists to be reprimanded for tweets.
Let's stay on this story a little bit more and go back to the phone, 713-440-8870. Chris, what's your thought on the Terry Moran situation?
I just don't think it's fair that they're taking it out on Terry Moran. As long as he wasn't using the ABC Chiron to make his statement, ABC shouldn't have anything to say about what he has to say. That's his personal opinion on X. He didn't say it on ABC. He said it on X, which is a completely different platform.
Chris, thank you for that. If someone of our producers can take a peek and let me know, did he do it on a Terry Moran ABC, something like that, or was it on his own personal? Do we know which way it was? I'd love to know that one. But thank you very much for that comment, Chris. Let's go to Alton from Northwest Houston at 713-440-8870. Alton?
Yes, I just wanted to say that I totally agree with what Terry Moran say, and I agree with the private caller. It's his opinion, right to that, all free speech. He passed today.
Alton, I'm guessing that you agree with Terry Moran, but you're breaking up on us a little bit. If you want to try and give us a call back, we'd love to hear a little more fully from you. The number here is 713-440-8870. It was Terry Moran's
and to clarify, it was
personal Twitter. So that's different, because I know like some people here, we have an HPM in our name, or we just have our own site. And so it should be viewed differently. What is your opinion as opposed to,
how much
Frank
does he does he really separate from ABC in people's minds? I
approach my social media as I am always representing Houston Public Media. So when I write, even if it's cutesy or stuff about my mom or what's going on, I always look at it through the eye of any one of our listeners could be looking at it, and I try to keep it.
We did get a text from our executive producer who says, as a journalist, still no bueno.
Yep. Okay. Now we want to go back. We were also talking about our other story about the travel ban, and we have some calls holding on that. Let's see. Cheryl from West Houston. What are your thoughts on the travel ban? Are you there? All right, let's try Mike. Mike was on the line also from Galleria. You there, Mike?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, Mike.
Yeah. Hey, I was just commenting, because there was a question put out. Why is all of this happening? Why? And you have to go back to the blueprints that Trump made when he did his book, Art of the Deal. Well, it's the same blueprint all over again every time, because that's what he knows how to do. Okay? Basically, he tries to distract you while he's doing something else. All these things are distractions while he's taking in the funds under his control from all the tariffs and basically everywhere else he can use. Now, no one's going to stand up against him in our government when he decides to use the money for certain things. Okay, like Greenland. Okay, like Panama. Panama, on its own. Okay, they don't have anything to do with the problem that he's brought to us. Basically, there's, I believe, some tax fraud things going on over there, and he's just trying to manipulate and strong arm them to drop everything. Had nothing to do with what they're being charging the U.S.
Mike, thank you for that comment. Remember, we're interested in what you have to say. 713-440-8870.
Coming up on Hello Houston, we bring you the latest installment of the University of Houston professor and party politics co-host Brandon Rottinghause's new feature, Techsperts. This is Hello Houston on News 88.7.
I'm Stephen Dubner. On the next Freakonomics Radio, when you are failing, how do you know whether to tough it out?
You know, hope springs eternal. This is a great idea. You just have to raise $250,000.
Or to move on?
We just could not stop it from leaking.
Grit versus quit. We continue our series, How to Succeed at Failing. It's next time on Freakonomics Radio.
Support comes from the Dan L. Duncan Comprehensive Cancer Center at Baylor St. Luke's Medical Center, offering comprehensive cancer care that is compassionate, personalized, and driven by clinical research. More at stlukeshealth.org/cancer. Support comes from the Eternal Gandhi Museum, celebrating International Day of Yoga, with an open house, yoga for all skill levels, cultural performances, and more. Open to the public, June 21st. Registration at egmh.org.
Support comes from Uptown Appliance Repair, now open and ready to service Houston's residential and commercial appliance needs, while staying committed to the health and safety of the community. More at uptownappliancerepair.com.
Houston Public Media is rooted in our community. We show up at school board meetings, city council votes, and neighborhood events.
That's how you stay informed about what's happening around you.
through deep local reporting that brings clarity and insight.
Your support powers this public service, so Greater Houston stays informed, connected, and safe.
Support local journalism right now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
Support comes from Galveston Historical Foundation, celebrating Juneteenth. As Juneteenth's birthplace, visitors can explore exhibits, tours, and events honoring the legacy of freedom all month long. More at galvestonhistory.org/Juneteenth 2025.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now back to Ernie Manouse, Celeste Díaz Schurman, and Frank Billingsley.
With the latest happening in the Houston City Council following last week's approval of Mayor John Whitmire's $7 billion budget after an 8-hour meeting, we figured now would be a good time to bring you the latest installment of University of Houston professor and party politics co-host Brandon Rottinghause's new feature, Techsperts. In this episode, Brandon breaks down and explains Houston City Council as well as gets the perspective of two individuals involved in city government. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of Techsperts.
Welcome to Techsperts, Houston Public Media's short primers on Texas government. I'm Brandon Rottinghaus, a political science professor at the University of Houston.
Council come to order.
You're hearing the sounds of the weekly meeting of the Houston City Council led by the mayor. You probably haven't heard this before because, well, most people haven't. Unless you have business with the city, you probably haven't spent much time thinking about what Houston City Council does. Let's unpack it. Houston's mayor is elected every 4 years and serves as the chief executive officer of the city. Think, sort of, the president of the city. The mayor is responsible for the general management of the city and ensuring, like other executives, that all laws and ordinances are enforced. The mayor has administrative duties like making appointments with the approval of council and department heads and a person serving on advisory boards. In fact, the mayor is both a legislator and an executive in Houston. His or her honor are voting members of council and its presiding officer tasked with appointing committees and appointing and dismissing department heads. But the most important role the mayor plays is agenda setter for city council. The city council is made up of 16 members who are elected every 4 years. 5 council members are elected at large, that is, from voters across the city, and 11 are elected from geographically carved districts, separating Chinatown, the 3rd Ward, Montrose, and Memorial. Starting in 2017, council members are limited to 2-year terms. The weekly meetings find the mayor and council members sitting around what looks like a giant horseshoe in historic WPA deco chambers in City Hall. In the well of the horseshoe is the main dais where speakers address the assembled leaders who sit in a rather intimidating wraparound fashion. But the most dominant voice of all is that of the mayor. Houston is unique in many ways. Think Orange Show or the Art Car Parade, but it's especially unique in governing the city. Houston has what we call a strong mayor system, which means that the mayor controls council's agenda, and members generally have to curry favor with the mayor to get things done. For a council member to get on their team and to get an item on the agenda, they have to stay on the mayor's good side. Most other cities like Dallas, Austin, El Paso, San Antonio have a manager who runs the day-to-day operations of the city with the guidance of the mayor and council who are responsible for passing ordinances. Houston's mayor doesn't have a veto power, but why would you need a veto power when you control the agenda? One caveat to the Bayou City mayor's near total control of the city's agenda is a feature passed by voters in 2023 where 3 or more council members can, by written request, have an item placed on the weekly city hall agenda for the full council to consider. The council currently sends these requested items to a committee for review, gumming up the process a bit, but siphoning off some of the mayor's total control. It wasn't always this way. City council was at the center of the city's commission and manager system until about the late 1940s, where the city manager system, which was an interlude form of a commission government before that, was abolished, and council began to take a backseat to a stronger mayor. City council has expanded its power since then. In the 1970s, in response to the Voting Rights Act concerns about racial redlining, the city voted to enlarge the council and create some single-member districts, which dramatically reshaped what was then the weakest branch of city government. So council members can put their items on the agenda, although there is some pre-meetings with the mayor where they can bargain their way to get an item on the agenda. But council members can delay the consideration of an item, known as tagging. A tagged item gets reconsidered the following week. Most municipal elections across Texas, the positions are nonpartisan on paper. Sussing out the political leanings of candidates for city council is as much art as science, but most city council members clearly fall into one or the other political party. Let's talk to some people who know a little something about city government. First up is Emily Hynds, who spends a lot of time watching debates in City Hall. Emily Hynds, welcome to Techsperts.
Thank you for having me.
Can I get you to tell me about Emily Takes Notes? You might be the most interesting political person in Houston. So tell me about your project.
That's quite a compliment. I attend Houston City Council meetings every week. And by attend, I do mean I watch them virtually because they have to legally put them online for everyone to view. So I watch them from home and I take notes during the meeting. And then I like to say I translate them because the language that we use is pretty boring and pretty technical. So I sort of highlight interesting things that happen. I also scan the agenda because not everything that's on the agenda gets discussed at the meeting. So I scan the agenda and then I compile all of this into a notes version that I have a website. So I put them up. If you like reading, I put them up on the website. I also put them up on social media in slide form. And I do a podcast, which is really just me reading the notes. It's not too fancy, but it's for people who may not like reading or, and it's short too. It's 8 or 10 minutes long. You can listen to it on your commute or while you're doing the dishes.
Perfect. Yeah, brief is always good, right? Trying to convey the real kind of nugget of it. So you've seen a lot of city council. I'm wondering, in your opinion, what's the reason why people should watch city council? Why should people pay attention to it?
Well, they are voting and deciding on things that affect every Houstonian daily. They're voting and deciding on roadways and the water system and the police budget, where all of those resources are allocated to. These are things that we deal with every single day, our water bills. Even if you're a renter, those costs are getting passed down to you, and it's something that would be good to follow and so that you know what's happening around you, literally on the streets, in your home. And it has implications with the state as well, because the state, both the state of Texas and the federal government, interface with the city as well in really interesting ways. So it is local, but it also does have impacts beyond Houston as well.
You are a trained theater person. Like, you have obviously a degree from the University of Houston, go Cougs. I'm wondering if you think that some of what they're doing is kind of performative, and obviously there's some substance there too, but are they putting on a show for us?
I think all of politics is performative. I think you have to be a performer to even want to go into politics, which is probably good and bad. But if they are intentionally putting on a show, it's not very good. It's pretty boring, mostly. Some weeks are exciting, like this past week. But yeah, I don't know. That's a complicated question for sure. I think anyone who's in the limelight is a performer, whether they thought they were going to be or not. You do have to develop some kind of personal code that you're using when you're on camera versus off.
So obviously Houston has a strong mayor system, and we've seen some strong mayors who get to set the agenda. I'm wondering, in your estimation, sort of how that balance of powers played out in the years that you've been watching city council. Do you see this kind of ebb and flow between council members and the mayor? Who's getting the better of this relationship? And or is it really a shared kind of arrangement that we might kind of hope?
It's more of a shared arrangement now, but the mayor really does flex his power, both the previous mayor and the current mayor. So what it means to have a strong mayor system is that, from what I can tell, the biggest is that the mayor sets the agenda, and nothing can get voted on unless it's on the agenda. So last year, I think it was in 2023, several council members put forth a proposition and it was approved, so that a coalition of 3 council members could put something on the agenda to get voted on. So that happens now, and it happens pretty regularly. It's happened several times this year, and it hasn't really played out, I think, the way that people thought it was, because what has happened now is that several council members will propose something to get on the agenda, and instead of it actually getting voted on, it will get sent back to the administration for more work, which means maybe it'll go to committee, maybe we'll never see it again. We're not really sure. That tool is a little nebulous. So I think it's in flux, and I don't think that just because the council has that tool now, it means that they have automatically balanced the power. One thing that it has done has caused just more discussion to happen about agenda items that wouldn't have gotten on there anyways. So we are getting to hear about priorities from council members that we might not have gotten to hear. And also it's helping to build a coalition politics system, which wouldn't necessarily have happened before. And I think that's interesting as well.
Really interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a nice way to think of it. And sort of what you do really, I think, is translate perfectly the sort of political world into usable, digestible nuggets. I'm wondering if you think there's a way that council could do this better. Like, how could they really attract more people watching it?
They could have meetings that don't take place at 9 a.m. on a Wednesday morning or at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon. This is a dialogue that has been happening a lot more lately. Just last week, there was someone commenting at council about how there were several public hearings last week on different TERSs throughout the city. And this commenter said, why isn't the public hearing for the Southwest TERS not happening within the boundaries of the Southwest TERS? And that's such a good criticism and would make all of these meetings more accessible. And it's one thing that they did during the pandemic, make them a little bit more accessible by allowing people to interface virtually for giving public comments. You have to actually go into the council chamber or to a meeting if you want to interact with the council members and give public comment. During the pandemic, they set up a system that you could do it virtually, and they took that away, which is pretty disappointing because we have the technology. It could still happen and it would make it a lot more accessible to people, but they decided they didn't want to do that. Really what would be cool is if they had more flexibility with the dates and times of the meetings, which the mayor himself has signaled that he is open to, but we have yet to see any of that really happen.
Interesting. Final question. What's the most interesting thing you've seen happen at council? Funny or quirky or embarrassing? What's the most impactful thing in these years you've been watching?
Okay, I have two.
Okay.
The funniest, quirky thing is that every year they do this fundraiser for the zoo called Kiss the Critter. So council members have a competition to see who can raise the most money for the zoo, and whoever loses has to kiss a critter that the zoo brings in. They don't actually kiss them. It's definitely false advertising, but it's fun. It's cute. A zoo representative comes in, and usually it's a lizard. I think that several times that I've seen it happen. They bring a lizard in, and the zoo gives a spiel, which is really nice. So that's like the weirdest, quirkiest, funniest thing that happens. And the most interesting thing that happens, and one reason why I love watching, is they will outright argue, and it's so dramatic and fun. And that stuff doesn't make it into the news usually. Just this, it's gossip, it's drama and gossip, and it's kind of fun in a way that we don't often see with national politics, because I feel like national politicians are more aware of the camera, more aware of their public persona, less willing to like get into the nitty gritty. But at council, it doesn't happen all the time, but sometimes they are outright arguing, and it's just kind of fun to watch.
That's amazing. Emily, thank you so much for being on Techsperts.
I'm really glad to be here. This was fun.
We also caught up with Councilwoman Amy Peck, who represents District A in West Houston. Our Councilwoman Amy Peck, welcome to Techsperts.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So you've been on City Council since 2019, so this is your second term. You've seen a lot, obviously, of important policies come and go, but in a nutshell, what does Houston City Council do?
So we are responsible for all of the local government operations. So street repairs, water, wastewater, sewage, trash, all of the really fun things that I'm sure you don't like to think about, but I actually love thinking about it and talking about it. So it's basically all of the local items that you see that affect your daily life.
That's fantastic. One of the things that the council does is to govern by committees. Can you tell us a little bit about what committees you're on and what the committees kind of generally do?
Yeah, so I am the chair of the Public Safety Committee, which is something very important to me, as I'm sure it's important to most Houstonians, the public safety of our city. And so we look at HPD and HFD, as well as EMS, or really anything related to public safety, which kind of encompasses a lot of areas. And I'm also the vice chair of the Quality of Life Committee, which kind of talks about a lot of different topics. And so anyone can go to the city's website and, just do a Google search of City of Houston committees. And it's a really great way to, if you're looking to get involved, you can look at the upcoming agendas, see the items that we're talking about, and see what's of interest to you.
So you've been, like I said, on council for a term and plus, and obviously there's a lot of things that happen every week. What's one thing that you can point to that you can tell people that you made a difference because council was able to really step in and solve some big problem?
Oh my gosh, there's so many of those. Most recently, I would say, paying the firefighters what they deserve. That was a huge item. That was really big. Most recently, the mayor's changes with the water billing. I mean, that has been something that has really been an issue for years, even before I was on council. Every time someone contacts my office about a water bill issue, it was kind of always the item that we were like, oh no, because we were never able to really do anything for our constituents, which, as people in my office, you love to help people. It was always the most frustrating because we couldn't do anything. And now there's a lot of tools. And so that has been really big for people's daily lives. So a lot of good changes, especially lately, that have really made big impacts.
Yeah, and council can have a big impact, and obviously everyone dedicated to big things pushing in the right direction. But council obviously is sort of limited in terms of what they can do by system, right? And the system is a kind of strong mayor system, which is unique because many other municipalities across the state don't have that. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about kind of council's role inside the kind of dynamic of power with the mayor and with the other council members.
Yeah, so historically, council has kind of been more of like the board of directors with the mayor serving as the CEO and chairperson. And so the mayor sets the agenda every week. And so historically, we just kind of either vote yes or no or offer amendments, but we haven't been able to actually put items on the agenda. And of course, that all changed recently with a charter amendment that now allows 3 or more council members to put items on the agenda. And I was really excited to be the first one to put an item on the agenda last year about water bills, actually. And the mayor at the time, Mayor Turner, actually ended up incorporating our proposal into kind of his bigger ordinance about water bills. But it was really exciting that, the voters voted to allow us to have that power. And I felt like we did something really good with that first, chance at it. And since then, many council members have put items on the agenda. I have been working with Mayor Whitmire, and he's kind of already put all the stuff that I've worked with him on, he's put on the agenda. So I haven't really had to use that tool. But just the fact that it's there, you never know who the next mayor is going to be and, where council falls as far as in support or not in support. So I think that was a really important tool because our constituents elect us to do a job. And before that tool, we would just have to say, well, talk to the mayor's office. And I hated telling people that, I ran because I wanted to do the job and to take these important items from people and actually do something good with those items and make change. And so it's really exciting for me to be on council now, being able to actually affect change like that.
What is one kind of perk of being on council, besides getting to help people all day and being obviously part of a big responsive government in Houston? What's one perk that you would tell people that you weren't expecting when you were first elected that you saw and have enjoyed?
Oh my goodness, there's not a lot of perks. I mean, it's not really helping people. And I would say the perk is, getting to see firsthand like the inner workings of our city that we love so much. But that's really it. I mean, it's technically a part-time job, so we get a part-time salary. And so it's really just, like you said, helping people. I mean, that is the big perk. And that's the reason why I ran for this job.
Fantastic. Well, Councilwoman Peck, thank you so much for being on Techsperts.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to Techsperts, and thanks to everybody, cast and crew here at Houston Public Media for making it happen.
You just heard the latest episode of Techsperts with Brandon Rottinghaus, University of Houston political science professor and co-host of Party Politics of Channel 8. You can listen to previous installments of Techsperts available on our website. Just go to houstonpublicmedia.org and search Techsperts. Coming up on Hello Houston, we'll learn more about the Fade to Black Arts Festival from founder Denise O'Neil. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
Hi, I'm Craig Cohen, the host of Houston Matters. Join me weekday mornings at 9 or at your leisure on your podcast feed for your daily guide to the people, places, issues, and ideas that define Greater Houston. From politics to the economy, energy to the environment, healthcare to education to transportation and beyond. If it matters to Houston, it matters to us. Check us out wherever you get your podcasts or live on the air weekdays at 9 a.m. right here on News 88.7.
Tonight on Houston Public Media TV8, Antiques Roadshow travels to Albuquerque to reveal some classic items from the past, including a 1962 Fender Stratocaster and a 1965 Beatles signed photo. Tonight at 7 on TV8.
It's more important than ever to stay informed. That's why Houston Public Media delivers well-researched news that's free for everyone.
And right now, your support helps make sure it stays that way. No subscription, no paywall, just news that's here when you need it.
Give today to keep yourself and your community informed, no matter what the future holds.
Make your donation now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
Or call 888-909-0887.
Support comes from Texas Mutual Insurance Company, committed to strengthening the state's workforce and its communities through safety and wellness grants and education initiatives. More at texasmutual.com/community impact.
Support comes from Moody Mansion, the restored 28,000 square foot mansion on Galveston's Broadway, furnished with original items and decor from the early 1900s. Open daily for tours. More at moodymansion.org.
Support comes from Gen Pro, a Houston-based home generator service providing power to homes during unexpected outages, helping with connectivity and productivity. More information is available at genpro.com.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's Ernie Manouse, Celeste Díaz Schurman, and Frank Billingsley.
A lot of activity today, hearing from all of you. 713-440-8870. Celeste, we've been getting a lot of information in.
Yep. That's right. And earlier, Ernie's topic was about the veteran ABC News correspondent Terry Moran, who was suspended Sunday after he posted a highly critical assessment of President Donald Trump and Trump's Deputy Chief of Staff, Stephen Miller, on his social media platform. We did clarify it was his personal social media platform, and we did receive quite a few off-air comments. One from Ricardo from the medical center says the things he put in his tweet are objectively true. There is heat behind the things he said. There's enough evidence to say that it's subjective. We also received a YouTube comment from about Terry Moran. Marvin Scott Edmonds Milton said, journalists are not allowed to post editorials. If that is the case, then Walter Cronkite should have been fired when he came out against the Vietnam War. So it's definitely clearly that people have opinions about this, and you can join the conversation at 713-440-8870.
I guess there's always the argument, do you have the right to say it or should you have said it? And I think there's the balance there. I think he definitely has the right to say it. Should he have? Is he not seen as a representative of a particular news source? Regardless of the validity of what he said, I think that the way it was said, it wasn't a factual reporting piece. But as we also said, it was on his personal account.
But he's not saying he likes Burger King fries better than McDonald's fries. I mean, that's a personal opinion that you can have. When he interviewed President Trump just a couple of months ago in the Oval Office, and so he is out there as a journalist on a national level.
Is it qualifiable though to say world-class haters? I mean, that seems...
That's what I'm saying.
World-class haters.
It's okay to have an opinion if you're a national reporter, but you shouldn't share that kind of an opinion.
Right.
Again, I think this looks at just in general media as a whole. And when we look at Fox News, there are Fox and Friends, and there's other, we look at NPR, and people have taking sides. People are saying, we continue to look at the blurred lines of journalism. Are the lines being blurred? Whenever he, as a journalist, is putting out a personal opinion, I don't know. Give us a call, 713-440-8870.
Well, I always had a rule, when in doubt, leave it out.
Yes.
So if there's something you really want to say, like I hate this person or I hate that person or that person is a venomous person, if you're maybe doubting a little bit about whether you should put it out there or not, then don't. It's just better. It's just better to be safe.
And we do have a call. Amy from Bel Air is calling us right now. Amy, what is your comment about the Terry Moran situation?
Hi, my comment is I have been watching Stephen Miller since he was with Donald Trump in his first presidential run, and I'm glad that Terry Moran said this because Stephen Miller is a dangerous, dangerous person. The things that I have read about him, and I've listened to people interview him, and the things that the documents that he's written when he was younger. I feel like that he is a white guy that wants the whole world to be white, blonde hair and blue eyes, and he is extremely dangerous, and he's just Donald Trump's lapdog to have a white race.
Thank you for giving us your perspective. And again, you can join the conversation at 713-440-8870.
All right, I got something else to tell you about. I know we were all worried about the runaway pet zebra that was on the loose for more than a week in Tennessee. It was captured. safely captured for those of you who were worried. The zebra was captured and located in a pasture.
The videos and the pictures of this little zebra being carried on a crane, I think was adorable. I thought it was just absolutely adorable.
So now the zebra's back in stripes. Is that what you're saying?
Oh,
a zebra can't change its stripes.
Something else that you should all know in case you need a note on your calendar. Father's Day is Sunday.
Father's Day.
Don't forget, it's coming up.
Dad's Day. Yes, it's always good to celebrate Dad.
I love my dad.
But isn't it like Mother's Day is the most celebrated of all the holidays?
Of course, absolutely.
And I think Dad is way down on the list.
I saw that this Mother's Day tidbit is Mother's Day has the lowest crime rate out of the entire year.
Really?
Yeah, really.
Moms decide not to break the law that day.
Well, no, the kids, even when you're a criminal, you gotta honor mom.
Exactly.
So you hang out with mom that day.
Exactly.
Other things to know, the box office picked up a little bit, looking not absolutely horrible, but guess what? Mission Impossible's not number one anymore. Lilo and Stitch. $32.5 million. Then the John Wick new film from the world of John Wick, Ballerina, $25 million. And then Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning at $15 million.
Well, I can tell you why Lilo and Stitch is just blowing out, because it's hot outside and it's also raining. So parents are with their kids and they're like, well, we're going to see Lilo and Stitch. Even if I didn't want to see it, I'm going to see it.
Well, speaking about that, today is National Children's Day.
Oh.
So celebrate your children today.
Shout out to Evelyn and Philip. I love you guys.
And it's also National Donald Duck Day.
Donald Duck.
I don't know what you do to celebrate Donald Duck Day.
Hey. Oh my gosh,
Frank! Of so many hidden talents.
That was such a good one.
Okay.
I've got to say, these little storms that keep coming in, I really like them because it cools things down.
Oh, nothing like rain-cooled air. It just feels. It felt good walking into the station today.
Yeah, I was driving in. It was like 75, and I said, I can deal with this.
Because it certainly
enjoy it while you can.
It certainly gets hot and humid after a storm, though. So that's the other side.
I don't like the humidity. All right, guys, our Monday's in the books.
Monday's in the books, and that brings us to the end of our show. We want to thank you for listening, calling, chatting, engaging with us today on Hello Houston. We will be back tomorrow with more conversation. Superintendent Mike Miles will be joining us. Send in your questions, comments, 713-440-8870. Send us your text, and we'll see you tomorrow. This is News 88.7.
Thanks for listening to Hello Houston. Join us every Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to talk all things Houston. The Hello Houston production team includes Garrett Bowman, William Menjivar, Jen Altai, Todd Holslander, and Jim Kovacic. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at HoustonPublicMedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.